The number one issue by far in America's presidential campaign in November is globalism. This one issue will determine the future course of the United States of America. Trump and Biden are diametrically opposed on this topic and, as you might know, just about everything else. We're going to discuss the prophetic significance of the upcoming election, this edition of the Endtime Show. Well, good afternoon, everybody. I'm Dave Robbins with Endtime Ministries. I do thank you for joining me on this edition of the Endtime Show. And, you know, when we talk about the upcoming election, I have read many articles and heard a lot of radio interviews by different people. I was listening to one on the way to work the other day where they were talking about whether Joe Biden will run again at all or whether he will even be able to participate in the debate. Now, of course, you know that he was able to do the State of the Union, and so they say, well, perhaps he would be able to stand at the podium long enough to do a debate. I don't know the answer to any of that. As of right now, as far as I know, Donald Trump and Joe Biden. I know there's a couple other guys that are running as independents and different things, Kennedy, and maybe he's running as a Democrat, but the thing is, the question is, and the question I'm asking, because I'm writing an article for this, for the September-October edition of Endtime Magazine, and back in 2019, it was easy. Or I'm sorry, 2020, it was easy because it was Trump and Biden. However, and I think that's who it will be this time, but there's a lot of people saying they don't even think he'll be able to run. But we'll see what happens, right? I mean, time certainly will tell who is able to be on the ticket November 5. However, we're going to be doing a deep dive into the election today because of globalism. And really, I want to bring out how these guys are just diametrically opposed to each other in issues that will affect our lives. And so that's why we wanted to talk about it. Hey, the program used to be called Politics and Religion, right? Okay, so we're going to get off into a little bit of both today. So with that said, I want you to know that my wife and I will be in Kingsport, Tennessee this weekend. She and I will be traveling up there Friday. We'll be with you on Saturday evening. We'll be at the Christian Life Center. Been there many times. It's always been a packed conference. And so we'll be it's at 2401 North John B. Dennis Highway, Kingsport, Tennessee. Saturday evening, June 22nd at 6 p.m., I'll be teaching the Green Horseman and World War III lesson. Wow, is that relevant or not right now with what's going on with it still in Gaza and with Hezbollah up in the north? Both of them tie into this lesson perfectly, and I'll prove that to you Saturday night. And then Sunday morning, June 23rd at 11 a.m., I'll be giving breaking prophecy news, things going on right now. I'll be coming there, you know, with things that have happened this weekend. I mean, it's up-to-date breaking prophecy news, things that are happening, and then potentially we could have a Q&A session. We might do a evangelistic service. Who knows what's going to happen on Sunday morning. So that's June 23rd at 11 a.m. at the same church. So looking forward to seeing all of you there this weekend. Now, the globalists believe that globalists are people who believe in a one-world government, right? So globalists believe that the nation state has outlived its usefulness. You say, why are you starting with this? I thought we were going to talk about Biden. Listen, unless you understand the grand scope of this thing and what's really going on behind the scenes, the Trump-Biden issue, some people get caught up in the weeds, right? And, you know, they might think, well, inflation's very important. But the topic of globalism is much more important than that. You say, yeah, Dave, gas prices are going up and grocery prices are up. Look, I get it. I shop the same place you do. I buy gas the same place you do. But the thing is, I'm talking about the most important thing that will drive the direction of our nation in the future. Do we yield up all of our sovereignty to a world governing body? Or is it America first? This is what's coming up November 5th on the ballot. And again, a lot of people say, well, you guys are just Trumpers. Look, I don't care if it is who it is, whether it ended up being a Ron DeSantis or a whoever. I just want what's best for America. Don't want to be yielded up to a world governing body. So that's why I want to talk about this today. Because a lot of people, you know, are still on the fence, and I'm scratching my head over that going, you're still on the fence? What do you mean? Explain that to me. Because I just don't know. I mean, do we want to lose our nation? There's people that are trying to absolutely destroy our way of life here in America. You understand that's what's going on. They've got you mesmerized by inflation and things like that, and we all have to deal with it. But it's the guy behind the green curtain, right? The Wizard of Oz, and they want to get you mesmerized on the big green face, but it's the guy behind the curtain. What's he doing? That's what I want to know about. What's the big scheme here? What's the scam? Globalism. Globalism. They believe the nation-state structure has outlived its usefulness. America. And national sovereignty has become the problem. And that a system of world government is the only solution. Then the reasoning goes like this. History shows that sovereign nations inevitably, sooner or later, come into conflict. And when those conflicts can't be worked out through diplomacy, nations resort to war. Weapons of mass destruction have become so powerful that mankind now has the ability to destroy itself, actually many times over. Therefore, war must be eliminated, even outlawed. Well, the only way to do that is to eliminate nations, disband all the national armies, and place all arms under a global, one single global authority. And in their mind, it makes war impossible if that happens. Well, when a dispute arises among states, they can take their issues before the United Nations, presenting their cases before the UN Security Council. All nations would then agree to abide by the decisions of the global authority, thus eliminating war forever, right? Okay. None of that's true. That's in the mind of the globalist, but it's not going to eliminate war. I can prove scripturally that that's the case. If they would only ask me, I could give them the biblical answer. So, since all national armies will have been disbanded, and the only army left will be under the control of the global authority, all nations will have no choice but to submit to the decisions of the world government. Now, what we're facing here in America, what we're facing November 5th, is two candidates in my mind, unless somebody else comes along and takes one of their places, which is possible this year because of the cognitive decline of one of the candidates. However, what is facing every American citizen on November 5th is, do we yield up our sovereignty to a world governing body, or do we retain that? That's the decision. Okay. So let's do a deep dive off into this. Before we go there, let me talk to you about Birch Gold. Can your savings weather an economic storm? Think about it. I mean, what you put away from the future? I mean, economies built on a mountain of debt can fall like a house of cards. So there are a few physical assets you can invest in that can stand the test of time. Gold has withstood as a valued form of money for millennia. And it's why people are flocking to it now, and why Birch Gold is busier than ever. Through a little-known tax loophole, Birch Gold lets you convert a retirement account into a tax-sheltered IRA in physical gold, and it doesn't cost you a penny out of pocket. So to learn more, visit birchgold.com/endtime to claim your free info kit on gold. Can your IRA or 401k weather an economic storm? If not, call the people trusted by many, and that's Birch Gold. You visit birchgold.com/endtime and secure your savings today. Now, when you think about this scenario of all the nations yielding up their sovereignty and their armies and everything to this one world global political authority, there's one uncomfortable question that remains, right? Especially from a biblical perspective. All those plans, they sound pretty good until one uncomfortable question. What would happen if an Adolf Hitler should gain control over all the armies that are left? Or I should say, the only army that's left. Well, the world's checks and balances have been destroyed. Consequently, the world will be subjected to the worst tyranny history has ever known. Now, folks, that's coming. Promoters of globalism, they argue that such a scenario is never going to happen. But the Bible clearly prophesies that that is exactly what will happen in the very near future. There's going to be a planned world government, and that's going to become strong enough to dominate the world. So, only the world leader won't be Adolf Hitler. That's the problem. He's going to be much worse than that. The Bible calls him the beast or the Antichrist. And folks, so here's the deal. The only thing standing between mankind, now, remember this November 5. Of course, unless you vote early or whatever. However, and I'm not really telling you who to vote for, I'm telling you the facts. I'm giving you facts to help you along the way here, right? The only thing standing between mankind and the emergence of the planned New World Order or this world government, this liberal international order, is the United States of America and the American people's love of their national sovereignty. I love my sovereignty. I don't want to answer to a world governing body. I don't even want the government involved, our government involved in my decisions. But I especially don't want a foreign entity involved in it, right? So, because of our Constitution and the way the American mindset is, we're standing in the way of that. The states of Europe, they've already surrendered their sovereignty pretty much up to the European Union, or they're at least well along the way towards doing that. The leaders of the EU believe their European Union is only the first step to the coming global union. It's the model for world government in the earth. The establishment in America, the deep state, they believe the exact same thing. So many Americans see problems with both of the presidential candidates. I don't agree with everything Donald Trump does. Certainly not. No way. But these are the two, basically, the potential candidates that are coming up. And they've emerged from the primaries and everything. And so the issues are being continually argued, and they're many, right? So globalism is simply the belief that the nation state is now obsolete and that the world must move into a system of world government. Clearly stated, globalists believe national borders should be dissolved. A globalist believes we should not protect our border, and a one world government should be established. Well, we have one candidate that believes that, okay? And the Bible prophesies there's going to be a world governing body. It does. The two most famous prophecy books in the Bible, Daniel and Revelation, clearly prophesy a world government for the very near future. In Daniel 7:23, it says, "Thus he said, the fourth beast shall be the fourth kingdom upon the earth, which shall be diverse from all the kingdoms, and shall devour the whole earth, and shall tread down and break in pieces." That passage refers to the last day dictator, the Antichrist, who will rule the world just before the second coming of Jesus Christ to the earth. And Daniel 9:24 through 27 clearly states that the world government will continue up until the return of Jesus Christ, when the kingdom of God will be established on the earth. And then Revelation 13:7 says of the Antichrist and his one world governing body, "And it was given unto him to make power with the saints and to overcome them, and power was given to them, given him over all kindreds, tongues, and nations." So Revelation 13:5 even tells us how long the world government will continue. It says, "And there was given unto him a mouth speaking great things and blasphemies, and power was given to him to continue for 42 months. So this 42 months, that's referring to the time of the Great Tribulation that culminates with the second coming of Jesus to the earth. So this is the world government that is prophesied in the Bible. It's coming, but not every nation will participate in that. You said, well, the Bible just says a minute ago, you just read where it said every nation will comply. Well, that's where you got, it's talking in generalities. If you look at every possible scripture that pertains to this, we know, obviously, from Daniel 11 and from Revelation 12, that there will be a few nations that war against the Antichrist and resist his encroachment upon their nation in the end time. So that's why I'm saying you got to, just when you think you got it all figured out, right, you got to make sure you get all the pieces to the puzzle together to see what the entire thing looks like. Okay, so now we're going to get into some particulars on the Trump-Biden situation, right? Because we want to get into the weeds a little bit. We have to, because if we don't, then you're not really going to understand what's going on. Okay. So, you know, when we talk about the Antichrist, I wonder if he's going to be a coffee drinker. I mean, you got to ask yourself that question, right? Because I love coffee. Vince loves coffee. Doug loves coffee. And we like First Cup coffee. I don't know if the Antichrist will be a coffee drinker or not. He'll probably drink lattes and stuff like that. Who knows? However, First Cup, these guys are a Christian-owned patriot coffee company out of the great state of Texas, and they've got 11 different roasts for you to choose from. Each one is named after a specific piece of American history. It's actually pretty cool. Doug likes the Boston Common. I like all of them. But you can get one of their roasts by going to firstcup.com. Use code Endtime to get 10% off. If you subscribe, they'll give you an additional 10% off. Go to firstcup.com and use code Endtime to get your 10% off today. All right. Now, back to this election conundrum, right? I mean, will the current president of the United States even be able to participate in the coming debate just a few days away? A bigger question than that, will he even be on the ballot come November 5? There are many people that are arguing there's no way he could. He can't hold a normal conversation with somebody. He can't give a speech he can't even veer away from a teleprompter for a second. And he'll wander off. When he was at the G7 meeting, he wanders off into a field, but yet, of course, all them videos are just doctored, right? Those aren't real videos, according to the mainstream news media. Those have all been made up with AI images and stuff. Actually, none of that's true. And so, I want to say, trust me, the issue on which all other issues turn is globalism. I mean, we can issue abortion, and I hate abortion. I don't want anything to do with any of that. We can issue inflation and taxes and everything. I understand all that. But if we lose our sovereignty and yield that up to a world governing body and our army and everything else, imagine, America would be gone. And so I want America to have great end-time revival and move back to our Judeo-Christian foundation. You say, oh, it's been proven that America was not founded on a Judeo-Christian foundation. Really? They used Bibles as our school books early on. Why would they do that? Judeo-Christian principles, right? Go back and look at some of the early laws and what all that was based off of. Okay. So, the issue on which all other issues turn is globalism. Will we yield up our sovereignty to this world governing body? Will America continue down the path to globalization and the New World Order, which is where we are headed right now? Like, if you follow this stuff, folks, the current administration in Washington is just, I mean, it is dragging us, and we're trying to hold back with everything more, but the current administration is just yielding up all kinds of stuff. Or are we going to reverse our course and reclaim our sovereignty? Now you say, well, that's going to take Donald Trump. God could move Donald Trump out of the way and put somebody else in there. I don't know who it's going to be. But it looks like it's going to be Trump and Biden on the ballot. So we'll see what happens in the near future. Will we trade our Declaration of Independence for a Declaration of Interdependence as the establishment says that we must? Or will we defend our borders and the Judeo-Christian beliefs that have made us the land of the free and the home of the brave? These are huge questions, but some people aren't even contemplating that when they think about voting, right? After the upcoming presidential debates, after the discussions of the political pundits and all of the arguments around the kitchen tables, and the election's going to boil down to one issue, folks, and that is globalism versus national sovereignty. Now, we can have talks about all kinds of stuff, but it's going to boil down to that, because that's where the two candidates, they are completely diametrically opposed on this issue. The upcoming presidential election, let's talk about it. So, President Trump and President Biden and former President Donald J. Trump, they secured the delegates needed for their respective party nominations months ago. I mean, it's setting the stage for a general election rematch in November. Now, it's the first time since 1956, I believe, that two former presidents have squared off against each other. It's not the first time. But I actually like it, because you don't have to sit here and wonder, where do the candidates stand on the issues? There's no guesswork this time. You know, what's going to be their response to crisis? Which direction will they take the country? We know. We've seen it before, right? We saw 4 years of Trump. We saw 4 years of Biden. You know what you're going to get with either one. So now you got to make a decision. What kind of country do I want to live in? That's the decision in November. You know, and there's probably Donald Trump said this prior to his back in 2020. He said there's probably never been a time when candidates are so different. He said we want law and order. They don't want law and order. We want strong, closed borders with people able to come in through merit and through the legal process. They don't want to have any borders at all. And so, folks, nothing has changed. Then think about this. For just a short period of time, let me push prophecy aside. And I want you to consider these issues. Abortion. Trump is no. Biden, yes. They want to force the LGBTQ agenda in America. Trump, no. Biden, and you're going to see this here in a minute if I can get to it before the end of the program. Biden, yes, absolutely. They just, Kamala Harris just had a television show of homosexuals at the White House, and they had a guy there that was probably a good 6'2" or 6'3", my height, with a beard, and the guy had a dress on in our White House. They're celebrating this stuff, which is diametrically opposed to the Word of God. But advocating transgender access to bathrooms and locker rooms based on their gender identity, just how they identify. Trump, no. Biden, yes. Regulations on businesses. Trump decreased that. Biden increased that. Military spending. Trump, increase. Biden, decrease. Foreign policy. Trump, America first. Biden, pro-globalism, even against Israel. Global warming, Trump, hoax. Biden, fact. And there's a lot that goes into that right there. The economy, Trump, record stock market, soaring economy. Biden, skyrocketing inflation. Protect the borders, Trump, yes. Biden, no. Second Amendment gun rights. Trump, pro. Biden, heavy restriction. And the list goes on and on and on and on and on and on. There's a lot of things to weigh out, right? That's why I wanted to bring it right down to one central issue here today. Globalism versus national sovereignty. If we lose that, the rest of the stuff doesn't matter. Right? We'll become Venezuela in just a very short period of time. We'll all be digging in trash cans to get something to eat. So since both candidates have been president, it's pretty safe to say, should either one of them get elected in November, or which one of them, the former President Trump, he's going to continue his America First policy. It's pretty safe to say that, making America great while protecting Israel. And, you know, if he could only get control of both the House and the Senate, along with nominating a couple more Supreme Court justices, wow, the things he could do for the country, right? But I can also sum up the next 4 years after a November 5th, should Joe Biden get reelected. I mean, we've seen how he has reversed just about every Trump policy, right? And I want to tell you, I want to clarify something here, because it's not the men, the reason I'm doing this program today. If Joe Biden was pro-America and pro all this other stuff, and Donald Trump was against it, we'd have a different conversation today, right? It's not necessarily the men, it's their policies. It's what they're doing. It's the direction they want to take our country in. That's really what I'm talking about today. But we're going to be faced with a choice here in about, 4.5 months that we're all going to have to live with for another 4 years. So I want to make sure we understand the grand scope of this thing and to try to make it easy. Now, I don't have the time left here today to cover everything the Biden administration has overturned. You say, what are they going to do in the office? Well, I'm going to tell you. I don't have time to go over all the things the Biden administration has overturned that Trump put in place. But I do think, for the sake of our Judeo-Christian base in America, and because the Bible foretells a world government is just ahead, there are a few things that you have to be aware of. And I'm going to we'll do a deeper dive. We're going to go into the issues the last half hour of the program. You certainly will not want to miss that, because it may not be some things that you've thought about. And so I want to make sure that you understand really what's going on in America, what we're fighting for, and what really has been changed over the last 4 years. You might be shocked. So we're going to talk about it and go deep into the woods on the backside of the break.
A voice spoke to me and said, I've got something I want to show you. I was so sure God had talked to me, and I was stunned by what I saw.
A direct fulfillment of this over 2,500-year-old prophecy. The United States will stand with Israel.
Why haven't I ever seen this before?
1/3 of humanity will die. What do these beasts symbolize?
The lion, the bear, the leopard.
The combined beast from Revelation 13 represents the end-time government of the Antichrist. Understanding the end time.
Now streaming on Endtime Plus and available to order at endtime.com/UET. Go to endtime.com/UET or call 800-ENDTIME.
What if you could understand Bible prophecy? Dave Robbins, the host of the Endtime Show's TV and radio programs, is holding a free prophecy conference near you. Gain peace and understanding about what the Bible says concerning end-time prophecy. Call 1-800-ENDTIME or go to endtime.com/events to see when Dave will be in a location near you.
All right, everybody, welcome back. Now, let's talk about some things that President Trump put in place that will affect us all, whether you have some kids in school, whether you have some nieces and nephews in school, whether you have some grandkids in school, whether you know somebody that goes to school. Let's talk about our kids in public schools just a moment. Back in February 2017, the Trump administration, I want you to put yourself in the mindset. I know many of you listening to me are parents or grandparents, or maybe you're wanting to be a parent. I don't know, but I'm just saying, put yourself in a parent mindset. I'm a grandparent. My kids are grown now and gone, but I have 3 granddaughters, getting ready to have a 4th grandchild. We don't know what it is yet, unless my kids aren't telling me. But the thing is, I've got 4 granddaughters, baby girls that are angels, and I would give my life for any one of them. So I can only imagine them being in a school setting and this take place. Listen closely. In February of 2017, the Trump administration revoked federal guidelines that was issued by former President Barack Obama that allowed public school students to use restrooms and other facilities that corresponded to their gender identity. Okay, just how they identify. Okay? So, according to Joe Biden's 2019 presidential campaign website, he's coming in, wanting to get elected at that point. And so he said, the website said, and I'm quoting, if elected, Joe Biden will, and this is the quote, ensure young LGBTQ plus people are supported and protected in our schools and college campuses by guaranteeing transgender students have access to facilities based on their gender identity. Just how they identify, not what's on their birth certificate. Joey was a boy, Sally was a girl, but how they identify. You know what? I'm a boy, but I think I might be a girl. Oh, so Joe Biden is saying we're going to guarantee you have access to a bathroom and different things based on how you identify, Johnny or Sally. On his first day in office, this is his campaign website, Joe Biden will reinstate the Obama-Biden guidance revoked by the Trump-Pence administration, which will restore transgender students access to sports, bathrooms, and locker rooms in accordance with their gender identity. He will direct his Department of Education to vigorously enforce and investigate violations of transgender students' civil rights. Now, folks, this is exactly what he did. According to the PBS News, the U.S. Education Department just recently, within a matter of weeks, they expanded its interpretation of federal sex protections to include transgender and gay students and moved to reverse the Trump-era policy. In a new policy directive, now, put yourself in your parent or your grandparent mindset. In a new policy directive, under the Biden administration, the department said discrimination based on a student's sexual orientation or their gender identity will be treated as a violation of Title IX, which is the 1972 federal law that protects against sexual discrimination in education. Now they've added sexual orientation or gender identity. And what happens? Well, the decision reverses the Trump-era policies that removed civil rights protections for transgender students. In 2017, the Trump administration lifted the Obama-era guidance allowing transgender students to use bathrooms and locker rooms that match their gender identities. Now, at least 11 states have adopted laws that are barring transgender girls and women from using girls' and women's bathrooms at public schools. And so the new regulation opposes those sweeping policies. So now just let's pause, because under the Trump administration, he said, no, that's not going to happen. We're not going to allow boys to go in girls' restrooms and use the restroom. Now, I came up in public school. My kids were fortunate enough to go to a Christian school, and I think my granddaughters are going to be able to be homeschooled. But I know many of you have kids that are in public schools. This stuff is supposed to take place here in August. And there are many states that are fighting it, saying, no, this is nonsense. You can't. But, it comes down to, is this the America that we want to live in? If Joe Biden will do this stuff during his first 4 years, worried and concerned about being reelected, imagine what will happen during the last 4. And so I'm asking myself the question, is this the kind of America that I want to live in? I mean, where let's say you got daughters or granddaughters in high school. Now, kindergarten and elementary and junior high, it's just as bad. But put yourself as a girl. Let's say you got a 15 or 16-year-old granddaughter. Do we want to live in a nation where a 16-year-old young man can suddenly decide he's a female? You say, oh, Dave, that'll never happen. What about that Leah Thomas guy that swam against Riley Gaines and took the trophy for her in that one deal where both of them tied? He competed as a swimmer for 3 years and then decides his last year he wants to compete as a female and decides he's a female. So, yes, you can immediately just decide. And that guy, that Leah Thomas guy, was allowed to change in the locker rooms with Riley Gaines in them. Okay? So this is happening in America. So imagine this 16-year-old boy in high school. Let's say he's a junior in high school. He decides he's a female. And now automatically be allowed, because of this Title IX change that the Biden administration did, he would automatically be allowed to go into your girl's restroom or change in her locker room at gym class. Is it settling in yet? I mean, besides globalism, this one issue would decide the election for most true Christians, right? But let's look at it from a few different angles. The prophetic implications. I mean, viewing the upcoming election through a biblical prophetic lens, it's possible that the next president could be in charge of some of the most powerful nation, the most powerful nation on the earth, during the signing of the prophesied peace agreement, a building of a third temple, a World War III potentially, and the ongoing establishment of a world governing body. Who do we want at the helm, folks? I mean, understanding that, there's two salient issues that we got to look at from a prophetic perspective: the United States involvement in or the exit from a world governing body, and the United States relationship with Israel. I mean, think about world government, the liberal international order. Global elites have been for decades working meticulously to create a world government. And the goal is a global governing system so all-inclusive and minutely detailed that it's going to control all aspects of everyone's life. And it's this universal agenda that they're talking about. Very, very, very important. And so the universal agenda is driving the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. It's to regulate all individual production and consumption with the ultimate objective of thought manipulation, resulting in absolute obedience and allegiance. And so the outcome of these efforts is the formation of international institutions: the United Nations, International Monetary Fund, the International Criminal Court, World Bank, World Health Organization, the World Trade Organization, and that's just to name a few. So the United Nations is the seat of this world government. So after World War II, the United States led these efforts to create this New World Order, or this world government. And every administration since the founding of the United Nations, whether Republican or Democrat, has fully supported the New World Order. But Bible prophecy says there's going to be a completely different political atmosphere in America throughout the end time. And according to the prophecies, there will be a world government established just prior to the second coming of Jesus Christ. But the United States will not be in full compliance with that agenda. And so there is going to be a world government. According to Revelation chapter 12:14, the United States is going to be missing. America has to withdraw from the world government. So how do we do that? Well, Joe Biden is a globalist. He believes in a liberal international order. Been a globalist for years. It's easy to see that Joe Biden's a globalist because of what he's done over the last 4 years, actually for the last several decades. And he fully advocates yielding American citizens sovereignty to a world governing body. And from what I can tell, almost everything President Trump did to push the American First policy and pull us out of the emerging world government, Joe Biden has reversed. So let me give you a couple examples of that. So, the Paris Climate Agreement. Ladies and gentlemen, human-induced global warming, which leads to climate change, is totally false. It's a scare tactic of the United Nations. The ultimate goal is to get the nations of the world to yield their sovereignty to the world governing body. President Trump knows this. And now you can understand the importance of President Trump's withdrawal from the Paris Climate Agreement. Back in June of 2017, President Trump stated, "Therefore, in order to fulfill my solemn duty," I'm quoting, "in order to fulfill my solemn duty to protect America and its citizens of the United States, we're going to withdraw from the Paris Climate Accord. As of today, the United States will cease all implementation of the non-binding Paris Accord and the draconian financial and economic burdens the agreement imposes on our country." He saw it was wealth redistribution 101, socialism. On January 20, on his first day in office, President Biden signed the instrument to bring the United States back into the Paris Climate Agreement. Okay? So, in the future, for the next 4 years, do we want somebody who will cut the strings of world government, of the giant cobweb, or do we want an administration that will help to weave the cobweb tighter around the United States of America? I'm telling you, the most important salient issue in the upcoming election is globalism versus national sovereignty. Keep that in mind. Make sure you're looking at this from the grand scope of what's going on here. Don't get caught up in the weeds of all the issues and, Joe Biden is automatically come up with a deal to protect the border, which in essence is still letting millions of people a year in. Look at everything in the grand scheme of things. If somebody done something for the last 4 years, they're not automatically going to change 4 months before the election. Why do you think they're doing that? Ask yourself that question. Okay? Let me see. Would they be trying to maybe purchase a few votes? Okay, moving on. I got to get politics and religion. Just get on to some religion, right? So, there's several other. I'm going to give you several other examples of how you really got to ask yourself, what kind of nation do I want for the next 4 years? That's where we're at. Do I want to be in a globalist nation, yielding up my sovereignty to a world governing body, or do I want to cut those strings and be America first and willingly, out of the goodness of our heart, aid the rest of the world in our efforts to move back towards God?
They that understand what is taking place will instruct many.
Except a man is born again, he can't enter or see the kingdom of God.
I don't care what label you've been given or what label you've given yourself. You are essential. You still matter.
This is a journey, and when we get to the other side of that, that's where our prize is. That's where our reward is.
End time is not going anywhere.
All right, everybody. Now, I've got a ton of these that we can go through. You'll get it. You'll get the entire thing in my next article in Endtime Magazine, the September-October edition. But think about the different changes that we've seen. Trump withdrew from the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action or the Iran nuclear deal. He understood there were sunset clauses, and it's going to allow them to get a nuclear weapon eventually. And he said, no, we're not going to do that. We're going to hammer them with sanctions. We're going to keep Iran from getting a nuclear weapon. Oh, President Biden, he has made restoring the 2015 Iran nuclear deal a top foreign policy priority. But reviving the deal has proved complicated. And the negotiations to restore that pact have been stalled right now. But he would walk right into it. Also, according to Bible prophecy, the end-time world government ruled by the Antichrist is going to be anti-Israel, which is why we should never elect a president who will side with the international community against Israel. And you say, well, Dave, I just don't think that's going to be possible. Listen at this. You say you don't think it would be possible. Well, let's talk about Israel for a second. In December 23rd, 2016, it was kind of like a parting shot to Israel and to Netanyahu, the Obama administration. Or I should say, remember, it was the Obama-Biden administration, because Biden was instrumental in all this. They abstained from voting on the UN Security Council Resolution 2334, and it allowing it to become international law. Item 1 of the UNSC Resolution 2334, it states that Israel's presence in East Jerusalem is illegal and is a flagrant violation of international law. It says the establishment of Israel, by Israel, of the settlements in the Palestinian territory occupied since 67, including East Jerusalem, has no legal validity and constitutes a flagrant violation under international law and a major obstacle to the achievement of the two-state solution and a just, lasting, and comprehensive peace. So this is anti-Bible, anti-Israel, but this is the mindset of the international community against the eastern section of the city of Jerusalem. Folks, that's where the Temple Mount is. They say that that should rightly be ran and occupied by the Palestinians. God showed Abraham Mount Moriah, where the Temple Mount is located. David purchased the threshing floor of Arana, where the Temple Mount is located. But yet, the international community comes along, this world governing body, driven by Satan himself, the dragon. And he says, no, it's illegal for them to be there. Well, the Biden administration agrees with that. So, when we talk about Trump versus Biden on Resolution 2334, you'll never see that on one of them charts about, let's look at all the issues. You'll never see Resolution 2334 or Israel on there. The international community believes the future of the Jerusalem must be negotiated by the Palestinians and the Israelis, sitting side by side in direct negotiations. And that's why Trump's announcement to recognize Jerusalem as Israel's eternal capital was such a shock to many. Back in December of 2017, President Trump said, therefore, I have determined that it is time to officially recognize Jerusalem as the capital of Israel. This was in the face of the international community, folks, you understand. He said, through all these years, presidents representing the United States have declined to officially recognize Jerusalem as Israel's capital. In fact, we have declined to acknowledge any Israeli capital at all. But today, we finally acknowledge the obvious. Jerusalem is Israel's capital. Now, that's biblical. This is nothing more or less than a recognition of reality. I'm quoting Trump. It is also the right thing to do. It's something that has to be done. And that is why, consistent with the Jerusalem Embassy Act, I am also directing the State Department to begin preparation to move the American Embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, which he did. He said this will immediately begin the process of hiring architects, engineers, planners, so that a new embassy, when completed, will be a magnificent tribute to peace. So the Trump administration also acted in defiance of the international community on Resolution 2334. You remember when Secretary of State Mike Pompeo said this, after carefully studying all sides of the legal debate, this administration agrees with President Reagan, and which Pompeo said that in reference to Reagan's position that the settlements were not illegal, and that the establishment of Israeli civilian settlements in the West Bank is not per se inconsistent with the international law. Went right in the face of Resolution 2334 and said, we don't agree with that. But, which is very biblical, very prophetic, right? And very pro-Israel. Well, according to the PBS News, the Biden administration, back in February of this year, restored a U.S. legal finding dating back nearly 50 years that Israeli settlements in the occupied Palestinian territories. Did you hear what I said? And I'm quoting the PBS News. They call it that Israeli settlements in the occupied Palestinian territories. That's not true. That's not occupied territories. That is disputed territories. And that the Biden administration finds that those settlements out there are illegitimate under international law. The United States of America, you guys. Secretary of State, this is in January or February of this year, Secretary of State Antony Blinken said that the U.S. believes settlements are inconsistent with Israel's obligations, reversing a determination made by his predecessor, Mike Pompeo, in the Trump administration, and in the Biden administration, their latest shift away from the pro-Israel policies pursued by former President Donald Trump. Now, folks, this is huge. This is the Biden administration siding on behalf of the international community against Israel. Now, we don't want to be in that position going off into the end time. We want to be standing against the world government with Israel. But the current administration is doing the opposite. Okay? But a lot of people don't even talk about Resolution 2334. They don't understand the dynamics of all of it and what it's all about. Okay? They're saying that Israel occupying East Jerusalem, where the Temple Mount is located, is illegal in the eyes of the international community. But God said 37 times in the Old Testament, I will put my name there. He did not put it there to give it to Palestinians. It was given to Jews, Hebrews. Don't you? It puts a whole new perspective on things, doesn't it? Okay, man, I got a ton of these. The next one, Trump's withdrawal from the World Health Organization. I mean, he stated that they are controlled by China. That's just one of the reasons, and that they're not transparent at all. But remember the pandemic treaty that they were trying to get signed, that we're not fully out of the woods yet, right? They still passed a lot of amendments and different things. They were trying to get that passed a couple of weeks ago. That would allow the World Health Organization to say, hey, there's a pandemic, it's global wide, and America shut down, wear a mask and everything else. Okay? Well, Joe Biden said no, Donald Trump said no. We're going to pull out of the World Health Organization. They're not treating us right. We're going to quit funding them. They're part of the World Organization, the World Global Order, and no, we're not going to be part of it. We're done. They're allowing China to control them. Donald Trump pulled it out. Well, guess what? Yeah, you guessed it. Joe Biden stopped the United States withdrawal from the World Health Organization. In one of his first acts as president, Joe Biden walked back the former administration's plan to withdraw the United States from the World Health Organization. You just got to sit back and sigh. Yeah, I mean, and again, if I didn't have the knowledge of Bible prophecy and what's in the Bible and know that I've got a relationship with the Lord, I'd be scared. I would be. But God hath not given us a spirit of fear, but of love, power, and of a sound mind. I'm going to walk through this end time with Him, in a great relationship with Him, being kingdom-minded and winning souls and preaching and teaching the gospel of the kingdom of God. But we're still going to live through some of this, right? So we got to talk about it. So, the Biden administration reversed the Trump administration's ban on another thing they did. Biden administration reversed the Trump administration's ban on transgender Americans joining the military. Now, Trump wrote in a trio of consecutive tweets way back then, after consultation with my generals and military experts, please be advised that the United States government will not accept or allow transgender individuals to serve in any capacity in the U.S. military. Our military must be focused on decisive and overwhelming victory and cannot be burdened with the tremendous medical cost and all these surgeries and things that they want to do and disruption that transgender in the military would entail. Thank you. Donald Trump wrote that in consecutive tweets all the way back then. Well, guess what? In 2021, Joe Biden lifted the Pentagon's ban on transgender people serving in the military. You say, why in the world would he do that? I've asked myself that question many times. The Washington Examiner, they published an article Read the title of the article. I'm going to give it to you, and then you can go look it up and read the article. The title of the article is Washington Examiner, The Military's Transgender Policies Enable Men to Shower with Women. Yes, that's exactly what I just said. In April of 2019, Donald Trump banned transgender people. I'm quoting from the Washington Examiner article. In 2019, the Trump administration banned transgender people from serving in the military. In January of 2021, President Biden signed an executive order overturning the Trump administration's ban on transgender troops serving in the military. I'm still quoting from the article. Because of the Biden administration's failure to establish limits on its military transgender policies, biological men still with male genitalia are able to utilize women's bathrooms and expose themselves to female personnel. A recent complaint from a new recruit suggested that his concern might have been more reasonable than we thought. According to a military hearing last Tuesday, or this was several months ago, an 18-year-old recruit was forced to shower and house with two transgender women who displayed full male genitalia. In other words, the 18-year-old recruit was a female. There were two guys that came in and said, hey, we're women. Oh, they're transgenders? Yeah, you can go stay with this girl, and you guys can use the same shower. But she decided to remain anonymous because she felt a formal accusation would harm her career and leave her with few options. Now, do I have a bunch more of them? Yes, you're going to get them all in the September-October edition of Endtime Magazine. I don't have time today to go through a bunch of them. You guys know about building the wall and protecting the border that Donald Trump did. Joe Biden halted construction on the border wall, terminated the national emergency declaration used to fund it. So now we got open borders. What is open borders? It's the globalist mindset, everybody. So what's the most salient issue coming up in our presidential election? Globalism, the belief of moving towards a world governing body, or national sovereignty. Cutting off the strings that have attached us to this world governing body, and let's be on our own, protecting Israel all the way through the end time. That's the goal here. And so I wanted to go through this today because what kind of America do you want to live in for the next 4 years? From a prophecy standpoint, I know I don't want to be part of a world governing body. I want to get away from that, stand with Israel all the way through the end time. Let's have great end time revival. Let's trust God. Let's be kingdom minded in the end time. And let's make the right decisions. All right. God bless each of y'all. Thank you for following us.